This might be the darkest coming of age story ever. Let's do it. Super Dark Times is about these two best friends, Zach and Josh. It's the 90s. They do typical teenage boy shit, like they go through the yearbooks and talk about all the girls. And they talk about this one girl in particular named Allison, who Zach very obviously has a crush on. They also have another friend named Daryl, who is just super fucking annoying. Daryl's friend Charlie, who was in middle school when they're all in high school, I don't fucking know. At one point, the four boys go to Josh's house, and we learn that Josh has an older brother that's away in the military. In his room, they find a bag of weed, and the boys, specifically Daryl, want to take it, but Josh says no. They also find a sword. The boys also come across this group of bullies who specifically seem to have a problem with Josh. Sometime later, the boys end up taking the sword and they're like playing with it in a field. And Josh looks up and sees that Daryl is smoking something. And it turns out that he stole the weed from Josh's brother's room. And Daryl's just being like a total fucking dick about it. He's like blowing smoke into Josh's face. So the two of them get in a verbal argument, but then Daryl hits Josh and a fight breaks out. During this fight, Josh accidentally stabs Daryl in the throat with the sword. So Daryl's bleeding and he makes a run for it into the woods, but he doesn't make it very far because he collapses and he dies. So the other three boys obviously start to panic and they decide that they are going to hide Daryl's body and the sword. So they cover him with a bunch of leaves and they bury the sword nearby. And things just continue to spiral. Zach goes home and he immediately starts having these like really dark nightmares. And the next day he notices that Josh isn't in school. And of course, when Daryl doesn't come home, his mom reports him missing. And everybody at school is talking about what could have happened to him. So Zach eventually goes to Josh's house and he's like, I don't feel right leaving Daryl out there all by himself. Like, I want to go back to the burial site. Which Josh talks him out of because he's like, no fucking way. Like, we're going to look super guilty if we get found there. So despite having these nightmares and obviously feeling super guilty, Zach continues to grow a relationship with Allison. And eventually she invites him and Josh to her birthday party. So Zach tells Josh about it, but Josh is continuing to get more and more reclusive and like pull away from Josh, so he declines. So eventually Zach goes to Allison's party by himself, but when he gets there, he sees that Josh is there too, and he pulls out a bag of weed and shares it with everybody at the party. Zach is like super disturbed by Josh and how he's been acting, so he straight up leaves. The next day, we find out that another student at the high school has been found dead, and it happens to be one of the bullies that we had met earlier that was targeting Josh. And he died by falling off a bridge. So Zach starts to get super suspicious and calls Charlie to tell him about it because Charlie's obviously the only other one that knows about Daryl's death. And he tells Charlie, like, what if he didn't fall off the bridge? What if he was pushed? And what if Josh did it? And Charlie is just like, never contact me again. We're not friends. Like an 8th grader saying that to you, good fucking bye. So Zach now is completely on his own and he decides that he's going to go back to where Daryl's body is. When he gets there, he finds that Daryl's body has been mutilated and the sword is gone. So now he knows that Josh is behind this because he's the only other one who would have known where Daryl was, and obviously Charlie doesn't want anything to fucking do with this. So he goes to Josh's house and he's not there. And it's at this point that Zach realizes that Josh is going to go after Allison. And he's fucking right. We see that Josh has tracked Allison to her friend Megan's house and he walks in with this something wrapped in a towel. He eventually convinces the girls to go upstairs so they can smoke. Meanwhile, Zach runs to the house knowing that something bad is probably happening. And when he gets there, he finds Megan's body in her room. Josh has killed her with the sword and has tied up Allison. Josh locks Zach out of the room, but he manages to get up on the roof and climb through a window. When Zach gets in the room, Josh is gone. But Zach manages to untie Allison, who is injured, and runs off to get help. But when he leaves the room, he finds Josh waiting with his fucking sword. A fight ensues between the two of them, and Josh hits Zach with the sword multiple times. So he's bleeding all over, he's injured. And eventually the fight carries out onto the lawn where a neighbor sees this happening. And as Josh is standing over Zach, ready to like deliver the final blow, the neighbor attacks him. So the neighbor subdues Josh long enough for police to arrive, and Zach stands up and punches him in the face and then collapses. So the police arrive and they wheel Allison out. And I like to assume that Zach survived, but we simply don't know. Sometime later, we see that Allison has recovered and she goes back to school. We see her sitting in class and she has a ponytail, and the boy behind her stares at the back of her neck, which has 3 scars from being hit with the sword. She takes her hair down to cover it, clearly ashamed, and the movie ends.